Hey everyone, Casey Scanlon here, bringing you another Lake of the Ozarks fishing report. It's March 13th. The water level here at the lake is pretty low. Went out the other day on a couple guide trips and actually got another one this morning. But the fish are biting. We're at winter pool now. They're bringing that. I'm not sure the exact water level, but looks like they've been bringing the lake down still. I left for a tournament in South Carolina. They were starting to draw the lake down. And it was kind of fluctuating. It was going back and forth, up a foot, down a foot, but a lot of current generation, which gets these fish biting, puts them around points and places where they're easy to catch or easier to catch, and just gets them active. So seems like the same thing has been going on since I've been back. Got out of the water a couple days this week, like I said, and the fishing was really, really good. So primarily, right now, we're still in our winter pre-spawn, patterns with jerk baits, crankbaits, Alabama rig, a jig. But, we've had really, really great weather this last week, and we were starting to get it even before I left for South Carolina. And, these fish are feeling that. The water temperature's warmed up quite a bit since my last report. We're at, pretty steady at that 47, 48 degree range, it seems like right now in the mornings. And that's going to fluctuate with the weather a little bit. But when you start out early in the morning and that water temperature is creeping up towards 50 degrees, you're approaching prime time. So the water's warming up a little bit earlier than normal, I'd say. And that's going to open the playbook up to a lot of different baits. All your soft plastics are going to start kicking in. Carolina rig, spinner bait, variety of crankbaits. The crankbait bite's already happening, has to be. Anytime you're in the 40s, that's a good bet. But you're going to be able to start throwing a lot of different baits, and these fish are going to transition from that winter mode to more of a pre-spawn spawning stage. They're going to start getting around these coves and pockets where they're going to lay their eggs, and they're going to start setting up around some of the available cover, whether it's boat docks or brush piles or rock piles, points, whatever covers outside of these pockets, that's where they're going to kind of stage up at a little bit. So this week, the jerk bait was really good. Seems like, we've got a new moon, which is, in my opinion, almost as good as a full moon. I actually like fishing on a new moon better because it seems like the bites kind of last throughout the day. Rather than a full moon, it seems like they bite early and late, and the bite shuts off relatively quickly. Well, this week while I've been out there, it seems like the bite really starts getting tougher in the afternoon. Anytime you have that low light period in the morning or some cloudy days, those fish get roaming a little more active, a little easier to catch. So if you get a chance to get out there, try to go early. That bite seemed to be a lot better. Jerk baits, been throwing a variety of jerk baits, variety of different colors. The water clarity, it's a little more stained than maybe what it was a week or so ago. We got a little rain last night, so that should help put some color in the water as well. But depending on where you're fishing, you just switch that jerk bait up. If you get really clear conditions, you want something very natural, maybe translucent, and on these bright sunny days, again, something very natural. These fish are just going to see your bait better. Now you get some windy, cloudy conditions, dark days, darker, more stained water. Use some of your brighter colors and try to draw those strikes and let those fish be able to see your bait. So same with the crankbaits. Crawfish patterns are always great in the spring. Don't be afraid of throwing, red, chartreuse, something like that, especially if you got some dirty water. But your greens and browns, your crawfish patterns are going to be a real staple this time of year. Rock crawlers, wiggle warts, variety of different flat-sided crankbaits, maybe your DT line, anything it's got kind of that subtle action. And then on the whole other spectrum, you've got your kind of wiggle warts and rock crawlers, which kind of have like a big wide wobble and a lot of vibration. But those two style of baits, usually like a flat side and then that wiggle wart style, really produce this time of year. And don't be afraid to go deeper or shallower. A deep diving crankbait or even a square bill can be really deadly depending on where these fish are at. Fish are really relating to the shad still. They're feeding up, getting ready for the spawn. So they're following the shad around, wherever they're at in these creeks and coves. Is where you're going to find the bass at. If there's not a lot of bait around, you're probably not going to find a ton of fish. So look at your creeks, your points, your channel swings, and start looking around these shallow spawning pockets and creeks. These fish are going to start moving in there, especially with this weather we're having. These sunny days, these fish slide up shallower. A jig. I'm liking like a 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce jig right now. If you're fishing deeper, of course, choose a deeper or a heavier jig so you can get down there and be a little bit more efficient. But that 3/8 to a 1/2 ounce jig, finesse jig is good this time of year. Just trimming your skirt down on your bigger jig and using a small trailer, something like maybe a beaver style bait or a craw without a ton of action is really going to produce this time of year. You don't want something with a ton of action, a big flappy craw that's kicking all the way to the bottom with its tails. Save that for the summertime. Get something a little bit more subtle, and you're going to get a lot more bites. So crankbait, jerkbait, Alabama rig, 3/16 to an 1/8 ounce is probably a good starting size on your weights. And then, alternate the size on your swim baits. Anything from like a 2.8 to a 3.8 or 4.8, depending on the bite that you're searching for. Of course, a bigger swim bait's probably going to get bigger bites, but not always the case. So again, with the Alabama rig, you got to kind of experiment with the different weights and things like that to try to keep that bait above the fish. That's really the key, is to keep the bait kind of above the fish, but not too far above them. You kind of got to be, you want to keep it there where that it attracts the fish, he can see it, and he's willing to swim over and grab it. You don't want to be below him, and you don't want to be reeling that thing too fast above him. So that's where kind of that Garmin live scope really helps. You can just be so efficient with your bait. And of course, the Alabama rig's big, so you can see it really well, and you can fish it for the suspended fish you see on your graph, or really put it around targets underwater like brush and rock piles and points and things like that. So that's a really great tool this time of year. And as it warms up here, you're going to start seeing your chatter baits, your spinner baits playing. My Ozark Flash 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce are always deadly this time of year. In fact, that's what I was catching a lot of my fish on at Santee Cooper last week in South Carolina. So that's going to start playing. Your shaky heads, craw type baits, brush hogs, you name it. It's all going to start working when we get the water temp into these 50s. Now the crappies, white bass are everywhere. They're in the backs of the creeks. They're in the backs of these river arms, and they're in the backs of a lot of these coves. They just seem to be really shallow right now chasing bait. And the crappie, a lot of big groups of crappie kind of in the backs of some of these creeks. A lot of them seem really inactive, not biting. Usually a jerkbait's a really great way to catch those, but I haven't been catching a ton of them this week. Or even the last few weeks on the jerkbait. You catch a few, they're big. I see the guys out there targeting the crappie with slip bobbers and, the Bobby Garland minnows, traditional ways. And I don't see them catching a whole lot out of those groups either. So drop out to the main lake, try some of these boat docks, try some of these brush pile fish that are maybe a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit more in the winter pattern, so to speak, and wait for a day where the wind's blowing a little bit. It seems like these calmer days, and you get some sunny conditions. Those crappies really don't want to bite, especially in the afternoons. They become really timid. So you guys are going to have to get out there and experiment with the crappie a little bit. I haven't been playing with them too much. I usually like to catch them when they're really biting. I usually like to go out there, leave my live wells open, and just fill them up. So they've been a little bit stingy lately, but they're going to turn on, and they're going to start spawning here. Probably in the next month. They're going to try to get up to the bank and spawn. So Crappie fishing is usually pretty good here. So if you put your head down and go out there and target the crappie, you're going to catch them without a doubt. Ton of them in the lake right now, and it's just going to get better. So that's the report for this week. Water temperature in the 40s. The lake's pretty clear. The water level's low, and the fish are biting. So we got the Bass Pro Shops Spring Classic pretty much throughout the month of March. If you trade in rod or reel, you can save money on the purchase of a new one. They've got a ton of great deals in the store. Be sure to check that out if you're in the market for some new batteries. Be sure to visit my guys at Wholesale Batteries. This is the time of year where people are getting out on the water for the first time, and they're using their toys maybe after they've been sitting all winter long, and got to have some fresh batteries. I've been super impressed with the Expion 360 lithiums I've been running this year. And of course, always my Odyssey cranking battery is stellar, but they've got a full selection, everything you need. And man, my guide trips have been booking up pretty quickly. It's kind of slow over the winter time, as is expected, but now that spring's rolling in, I've been getting a ton of phone calls, so dates are filling up pretty quickly. So if you want to get out there on the water, give me a call. We'll put it on the schedule and figure something out. So until the next report, good luck to you guys. Hope you catch some big ones.